The film opens with a group of criminals transporting a large shipment of cocaine for a fat client. After traveling some distance, the fat client requests a rest stop. Unbeknownst to the drug dealers, the client is an undercover police officer. He's already sent a location ping to the police, who have dispatched their lead operative, Lat 2, to the scene. Lat 2 has identified the location of his undercover ally and is prepared to move in. However, the crime boss receives a call. Realizing the client is not who he seems, he punches the undercover officer and draws his weapon, intending to kill him on the spot. The police immediately react, baffled as to how their informant was compromised. Lat 2 swiftly shoots the crime boss to save the informant, then takes out the remaining henchmen. One tries to hide behind a tree, only to be shot through the tree and killed. Only the crime boss remains. He takes the undercover officer hostage and threatens the police before escaping, and the police signal is lost. Lat 2 then goes to the last known location pinged by the informant. His captain, Wang, and the rest of the team arrive. They notice the informant left a fan pointed in a possible direction of the criminal's escape. Captain Wang asks a park ranger if the criminals could be hiding in the nearby swamp. The ranger replies that it's unlikely, as bodies are frequently recovered from the swamp. Locals and animals avoid the area, calling it the man-eating swamp, though the officers are skeptical of such superstitions. While the officers appreciate the ranger's concerns, they assure him they won't force him to accompany them, and he's free to leave. The ranger departs. After traveling for a while, Lat 2 experiences a strange vision. His team asks if he's all right. He dismisses it as something in his eye. They then discover a path behind a waterfall. Captain Wang instructs them to take only essential gear. Deep inside, they discover a desiccated corpse, its hands positioned in a prayer-like manner. Finding no other path, Lat 2 removes his glasses, and the cave suddenly illuminates, revealing many human-like faces. His eyes glow. The ground cracks open, revealing a demonic statue directly in front of Lat 2. He touches the statue, and the entire cave begins to shake. A door opened, revealing the criminal's warehouse. Upon inspection, they found the crates completely empty. Suddenly, the informant burst out, urging them to flee. There was a monster inside. The crime boss also emerged, discarding his weapon and begging them to arrest him, just get him out of there. Before they could comprehend the situation, the door slammed shut. The fat man blamed the boss for choosing such a monstrous location to hide his goods. Captain Wang asked if there were any other exits, but the boss claimed they were all going to die. A ferocious monster lurked within. Captain Wang decided to investigate, but the fat man swore he wouldn't go back in. However, knowing the interior better than anyone, he was needed. Captain Wang insisted, reminding him of his duty. Lat 2 gave the fat man a pistol for protection. They proceeded to a second exit. The crime boss opened the door, pleading for his life and demanding they get him out. Captain Wang ordered heightened vigilance. Lat 2 questioned the fat man's lack of fear when held at gunpoint in the forest. Unlike his current terror, the fat man replied that you can negotiate with humans, but not monsters. 2 soldiers were then grabbed and devoured by the monster. The team unleashed their firepower, but the monster remained unfazed. Lat 2 and a teammate investigated, discovering the soldiers' bodies but no monster. Then it attacked, darting between rocks. Lat 2 was grabbed, but he managed to throw off the creature and his gun. His teammate, instead of running, futilely fired at the monster until it was grabbed and eaten. Lat 2 recovered his gun and fired repeatedly, but the monster remained unharmed. Finally, a shot to a specific point on its head caused it to disintegrate into small, black spheres. Just as they thought it was over, the spheres rolled, and dozens, perhaps hundreds, of more monsters emerged, blocking their escape route. The team retreated, keeping distance from the horde. They ran onto a wooden bridge. Lat 2, in the rear, cleverly shot a support beam, causing a section of the bridge to collapse, cutting off some of the pursuing monsters. However, others climbed the walls to continue the chase. One monster crawled under the bridge and grabbed the fat man's leg. Lat 2 held him, shooting the monster and sending it plummeting. As another monster lunged at Lat 2, Captain Wang provided covering fire from below. Lat 2 shot out the remaining bridge supports, sending the fat man flying. grabbing onto a hanging cable. Both men descended, and just as they neared the rocks below, Lat 2 caught the fat man, helping him to safety. Now, the group was cornered by the monsters. Suddenly, the tower in the distance glowed, and the old park ranger emerged from a doorway. He claimed he'd warned them, but they hadn't listened. The crime boss recognized him as the one who'd shown him the hiding place and revealed the fat man's identity as an informant. The ranger had originally intended to lure the drug dealers to their deaths using the monsters, as a way to rid the area of them. Yet, Captain Wang's team had stubbornly pressed on. When Captain Wang asked who he was, the old man couldn't even remember. He blew a puff of smoke, causing surrounding pillars to erupt in smoke. He transformed, revealing himself as a sorcerer whose true form had never been witnessed by a survivor. He sent the monsters charging, but Lat 2 swiftly dispatched one with a single strike of his blade. Lat 2's eyes glowed, and he wielded a strange knife, relentlessly fighting to protect the group. The monsters recoiled, fearful. The sorcerer was stunned. Lat 2 was Ngo-Mi-1EC5N's man. Lat 2 didn't know Ngo-Mi-1EC5N, but the sorcerer revealed him to be the owner of the knife. It didn't matter, no one was escaping. The sorcerer summoned 2 pillars of water to drown them, but his magic was disrupted by a barrier. A man descended from the cave ceiling. Ngo-Mi-1EC5N himself. He was shocked the sorcerer dared to use his name. Ngo-Mi-1EC5N landed and gave the sorcerer 2 choices: death by his own hand or by Ngo-Mi-1EC5N's. The sorcerer, claiming to be a cultivator himself, summoned a pile of rocks. The crime boss fell to his death from the heights. The fat man and Captain Wang were lifted into the air, but Ngo-Mi-1EC5N dispelled the rocks with a gesture. He effortlessly dodged the sorcerer's attack, knocking away his staff and holding a gun to his head. The sorcerer begged for mercy, admitting to stealing Ngo-Mi-1EC5N's sacred elixir years ago. But Ngo-Mi-1EC5N held a grudge. The sorcerer offered a different condition: he'd given half the elixir to someone else. If he died, Ngo-Mi-1EC5N would never know who. Ngo-Mi-1EC5N gave him a chance to reveal his accomplice, and he named his grandson Duonkiru. Ngo-Mi-1EC5N instructed Lat 2 to kill him. The sorcerer thought Ngo-Mi-1EC5N was going back on his word, but he clarified he'd said he wouldn't kill him, not that he wouldn't let someone else. The sorcerer grabbed Lat 2's knife and slashed Captain Wang's leg, using him as a hostage against Ngo-Mi-1EC5N. Ngo-Mi-1EC5N asked if the sorcerer remembered who owned the knife. Ngo-Mi-1EC5N disarmed him and gave the gun to Lat 2. Hesitant, Lat 2 was forced to shoot when the sorcerer fought back. Ngo-Mi-1EC5N then destroyed the tower with his knife. As the tower collapsed, Ngo-Mi-1EC5N held a golden skull. The sorcerer's essence flew into Lat 2, rendering him unconscious. Lat 2 then dreamt of a plane arriving to rescue them, and saw the fat man carrying him out of the cave. In his dream, Lat 2 dreamt of being sealed away somehow. He awoke in a hospital bed, saw a knife on a nearby table, picked it up, and cautiously investigated a nearby presence. It was only the fat man, searching for something. He urged Lat 2 to calm down, explaining he'd been unconscious for 3 days. When Lat 2 tried the door, the fat man revealed he'd been trying for 3 days without success. Suddenly, someone opened the door. They hid, and Lat 2 attacked the intruder, a woman who disarmed him and fought back. Lat 2 grabbed a curtain for cover. She sliced it in 2. She scoffed at a Special Forces soldier like Lat 2 struggling with a knife. A man arrived, telling B-1CHL-189 to calm down and return the knife. This was Van Min. He explained they'd been held for medical checks. The fat man wanted to leave, but B-1CHL-189 insisted the dandy stroke I-1EC1UC-1E5C wasn't a place to come and go as they pleased. Van Min wanted them to stay. The bureau chief was waiting. He explained the Dan D-stroke I letter 1EC1U C letter 1E5C handled cases beyond ordinary capabilities, such as the recent swamp incident. Van Min then took them to a mountain villa. Inside, he immediately led them to the bureau chief's room. The fat man assumed the chief was important, noting a private chef. Van Min corrected him. It was Cow L letter 1BO letter 1E3NG, their chief. The chief offered them a meal and revealed they were to become investigators for the Dan D-stroke I letter 1EC1U C letter 1E5C. Van Min requested the chief assign them to his office, as good personnel were always snatched by the second floor. The chief argued they hadn't even signed a contract yet. The fat man refused. He lacked the skills. Lat 2 felt he was better suited for military work. The chief didn't want to force them. The job required mutual agreement, but returning to their old units was impossible. They'd signed transfer papers, though not personally. The fat man reminded Lat 2 that the chief had cut off their escape route. Their only other options were policing or security work. Accepting the job was the best choice. The fat man asked about the difficulty, and the chief stated the difficulty was offset by 10 times the salary. They accepted. Van Min took them to his office. The contract was for life. Van Min then took them below the villa to a huge underground facility, leading them to their work area. They encountered B letter 189 Quan, renovating a bathroom and generally wreaking havoc. When Van Min asked where everyone else was, he learned they'd all been borrowed by the second floor. Van Min was furious that the other department head had taken his people without permission. B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 then arrived, instructing Van Min to send the 2 new recruits to get their equipment before the end of the workday. She took them to meet her department head, Aotiern Sin, who gave them each a bracelet. This acted as their identification, communication device, and locator, uniquely able to sense the wearer's vital signs. If anything happened to them, the Bureau would know. B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 then provided them with their equipment, guns and backpacks. They'd have a 3-month probationary period before a final assessment to become full-fledged agents, with her as their supervisor. The bureau chief met with Ngo M. I letter 1EC5N, who was holding on to Lat 2. When Ngo M. I letter 1EC5N questioned why he kept the fat man, the chief said he had good judgment. He mentioned that Lat 2 had absorbed the sorcerer's power and that future complications might arise. Ngo M. I letter 1EC5N confidently stated he could handle it. Ngo M. I letter 1EC5N presented the chief with images of 2 artifacts he'd found, remarkably similar and belonging to 2 vanished kingdoms on a desert. B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 took the fat man and Lat 2 to the library, urging them to read extensively in preparation for a test. The fat man wanted Lat 2 to do the reading for him and copy answers during the exam. Lat 2, however, having joined the army straight from school, doubted his ability to even recognize the characters. B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 advised them to read extensively. It would help them get acquainted with the work. The Bureau had 6 investigative departments. Their department, the first, handled general investigations, once the largest until a betrayal diminished their authority. Now, the second department was the core of the Bureau. Only the department heads knew about the traitor. Department 3 worked internationally and rarely stayed at the Bureau. Department 4 was involved in field research. B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189's department, the fifth, collected information and provided equipment. Department 6 handled cases beyond the fifth's capabilities. She warned them not to cross the head of Department 6. She then led them inside. They encountered a group from the second department, led by their head, Caillou B letter 1EA5T Lao. Van Min and Caillou B letter 1EA5T Lao were surprised to see each other. B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 explained that the chief wanted Departments 1 and 2 to cooperate, but neither head wanted to work together. Caillou B letter 1EA5T Lao considered borrowing personnel from Van Min standard practice, as Department 1 hadn't solved many cases in the past year, further diminished by the previous betrayal. Caillou B letter 1A5T Lao advised Van Min to resign. Department 2, with its higher success rate, was poised to take over the bureau. There were rumors that if the bureau chief retired, department head Caillou would take his place. The fat man wanted to avoid this mission, but Van Min forced him to go, to avoid gossip about a superior unable to manage his subordinates. Before they left, the chief explained their mission, to investigate an ancient ruin beneath the desert. Previous investigations suggested a connection to a legendary ancient kingdom. A 5-person archaeological team had entered but never returned. A rescue team also went in, with no sign of them emerging. Hence, the Dan D-I letter 1EC1U C letter 1E5C's involvement. Their priority was rescuing the trapped people before they ran out of supplies. Van Min warned Kamu to avoid trying to control his people. Lat 2 and the fat man questioned B letter 189 Quan about the animosity between the department heads. He was afraid of heights and couldn't answer properly. Soon, they arrived. After landing, Kanu organized a line for their advance. When they met the on-site supervisor, Kalu instructed him to keep people away to avoid interference. Van Min, true to his name, greeted Ngo Mi letter 1EC5N, who was observing nearby. After reviewing the archaeologist's notes, they gained a basic understanding of the ruin's structure. Caillou then tasked B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 with monitoring the surface to prevent sabotage. He stated that if he didn't return by morning, Van Min would take command. Van Min also told B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 to set up signal relays to prevent Kanu from being trapped below. That night, the fat man questioned Lat 2 about the lack of news from Department 2. Lat 2 reasoned that the department head wasn't incompetent, so the cowardly fat man shouldn't worry. The fat man reflected on their shared experiences of life and death, wondering about their future. They went to sleep early. In the middle of the night, Lat 2 saw a herd of goats. He followed one. The fat man, noticing Lat 2's absence, followed him, as did B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189. The fat man caught up and asked why he was out. Lat 2 mentioned the goats. The fat man was skeptical, as goats are unusual in the desert. Lat 2 couldn't find the goats, thinking he'd been mistaken. As they turned to leave, they fell into quicksand. Lat 2 clung to rocky outcrops, which crumbled, sending him down. He narrowly avoided a falling rock and found a goat's skeleton beside him. He ran to the fat man, trying to wake him. He slapped him awake. The fat man asked if Lat 2 could climb out. He couldn't. The area was excessively weathered, making the ground too loose to support weight. The fat man tried to contact someone for help, but had no signal. Suddenly, Lat 2 saw a creature above the fat man, aimed his gun, and ordered him to stay still. The fat man, seeing nothing, told Lat 2 to wait, but the creature lunged, climbing onto Lat 2 and biting his arm. It then snatched the gun and pointed it at them. Lat 2 signaled to the fat man, and they hid behind a rock. The creature, however, didn't know how to use the gun. Suddenly, a stick flew down, knocking the gun from its grasp. The gun fired several shots, and the creature escaped through a small tunnel nearby. B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 then appeared, explaining she'd been assigned to watch over them. Curious about the tunnel, she entered. Inside, she noticed something unusual about the stone pillars. She realized they were offerings from a king who worshipped a heretical religion, incurring divine wrath that buried his kingdom. This was likely the location of that kingdom. B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 created a 3D model to study it, but the fat man wanted to escape first. Lat 2 urged patience. Van Min would send someone. B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 suddenly discovered something and told the fat man not to touch anything. But he accidentally triggered a button on a pillar. The ceiling began to collapse, forcing Lat 2 to push them both out of the way. The next morning, Van Min arrived to find them gone, along with B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189. He sent people to investigate. Lat 2 and the fat man were safe amidst the rubble. B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 was annoyed the chief had let them participate. considering them unqualified investigators, calling them useless burdens. Lat 2 realized they'd run out of oxygen if they stayed, so he told the fat man to help move some stones. Despite his fear, the fat man cooperated. They moved a stone, revealing a rope. Lat 2 pulled it, opening a passage. Noticing the ceiling was about to collapse, he told them to jump down first while he held the rope. He followed after they were safe. Sliding down, he saw the creature from the night before, but it vanished once they reached the bottom. They followed a path to what appeared to be the king's tomb. After examining the area, B1EA1CHL189 asked Lat 2 and the fat man to open the coffin. They tried but failed. B1EA1CHL189 examined it and discovered it was made of bronze. People of that era believed that burial in a bronze coffin prevented the soul from finding peace, suggesting the king had been murdered and imprisoned here. She then suggested they needed a specialized tool to open the coffin, but Lat 2 offered his knife. B1EA1CHL189 was skeptical, but let him try. He managed to pry it open. Inside was a wrapped corpse. B1EA1CHL189 recognized that it wasn't the king. The facial features didn't match those of the buried kingdom's people. The fat man, exploring the coffin, fell into a hole. He reported darkness and some paintings below. B1EA1CHL189 decided to investigate. The creature was still watching them. Van Min, worried, contacted B1EA1CHL189's department head to report Kao's absence and the 3 missing people. NGO-MI1EC5N, who was nearby, overheard. When the department head said she'd informed the chief, NGO-MI1EC5N took action. Meanwhile, Lat 2's group reached the king's tomb. The paintings depicted the king's beloved daughter, who fell in love with a man from a neighboring country. The king arranged the marriage, but the princess was later murdered by the man, who then attacked the kingdom. The king used forbidden magic to create a dark vortex, destroying both himself and his enemy. The coffin likely belonged to the king. The one above belonged to the princess's killer, whom the king had entombed in bronze to spite him. They noticed that the king in the paintings had blue skin, except in one where he held a lantern and prayed. There was no blue. This blue skin was likely due to the heretical religion. Suddenly, a lantern appeared on the king's coffin not present in the previous paintings. The lantern in the king's hand had vanished. Lat 2 was about to act when he suddenly lost consciousness. He then saw the lantern emitting green smoke that transformed into the king. The king sought revenge for his daughter. Lat 2 and the fat man fired their guns, to no effect. B1EA1CHL189 attacked with her backpack, seemingly succeeding. But the king unexpectedly stabbed B1EA1CHL189. The king then lunged, slashing the fat man's neck before continuing to fight Lat 2. Lat 2, wielding his knife, dodged the king's attacks, attempting a rear assault, but his strikes were ineffective. Meanwhile, B1EA1CHL189 and the fat man remained safe. NGO-MI1EC5N arrived, revealing Lat 2 was experiencing a high-level illusion. He'd been unconscious for almost an hour. B1EA1CHL189 informed the fat man that NGO-MI1EC5N was Department 6's head. He explained that while Lat 2 was experiencing an illusion, any injuries were real. NGO-MI1EC5N decided to enter the illusion himself to help Lat 2. He stepped inside, appearing before Lat 2, knocking away the king and urging Lat 2 to extinguish the lantern. The king, circling NGO-MI1EC5N, was captured. Lat 2 then knocked away the lantern, regaining consciousness. He reunited with the fat man, who informed him about NGO-MI1EC5N. NGO-MI1EC5N criticized Lat 2's poor skills. Lat 2 then recalled a way to escape. Meanwhile, B189 Quan informed the chief that Van Min had also descended into the ruins. They'd obtained a partial map of the ruins from a signal B1EA1CHL189 had managed to send. The chief ordered B189 Quan to pinpoint the location and begin excavation. They received another signal, possibly from Van Min, originating from the central area. Lat 2 revealed a hidden passage he'd seen when the king dissipated into smoke. They opened a hidden door leading to another battlefield. B letter 1EA1CH L letter 189 suspected the illusion had intentionally revealed information to Lat 2, luring them into a second trap. Ngo MI letter 1EC5N described it as a 9-death, 1-life situation. 9 paths led to death, 1 to survival, with no discernible pattern. Perhaps even the designer didn't know the correct path. Unable to solve it, Ngo MI letter 1EC5N told the fat man to choose a path at random. Hesitant, he chose the middle path. As they progressed, the path behind them began to crumble. The fat man panicked, blaming Ngo MI letter 1EC5N if they died. However, the path remained stable. Soon, however, their path also crumbled, sending them falling into a forest, where they landed safely. Ngo MI letter 1EC5N was astonished by the 3-layered illusion. They found Kanu and Van Min submerged in water and rescued them. While bringing them ashore, the fat man became entangled in underwater seaweed and pulled down. Lat 2 dove down, freed him, and they surfaced. They woke Van Min. The fat man asked why they were there. Van Min explained that while searching for them, he'd found Kordo submerged and attempted to rescue him, becoming entangled himself. Suddenly, department head Kao awoke and attacked Van Min with his sword. The fat man thought Caillou was settling a score with Van Min. Lat 2 tried to block the attack with his knife, but was thrown aside, suspecting Caillou was under the illusion's influence. They restrained Kao. Ngo MI letter 1EC5N, ignoring them, threw something into the water, causing it to burst into flames. He revealed the water was the source of the illusion. Kao regained consciousness. Ngo MI letter 1EC5N explained the lantern in the tomb originated from this water. Then, the creature that had attacked Lat 2 reappeared in a tree. They fired, but it moved too fast. Ngo MI letter 1EC5N used fire to repel it, then allowed it to approach, unleashing dragon fire to subdue it. They escaped the illusion. The fat man criticized Ngo MI letter 1EC5N for not acting sooner, pointing out that they received salaries for a reason. They found the missing people. Their energy pathways were blocked, leaving them in a death-like state. B letter 189 Quan had dug down from above. They quickly evacuated the injured. The fat man noticed valuable items and took some, including a necklace he asked Lat 2 about. Lat 2 thought it belonged to someone else and planned to return it. Ngo MI letter 1EC5N recognized the necklace's symbol. They returned, having rescued the people. The fat man found some gems in his clothes. Van Min decided to divide them equally. Ngo MI letter 1EC5N arrived, took a gem, and instructed Lat 2 to meet him at a specific address after the case, keeping it secret. B letter 1EA1CH L letter 189 then appeared, accusing them of concealing something and demanding they hand it over. Back at headquarters, Van Min celebrated with Lat 2 and the fat man, acknowledging their significant contribution to Department 1's success. Department 5's head joined them, suggesting they drink from bottles, not glasses, to show their strength. Van Min drank a whole bottle and became drunk, declaring the new recruits the true heroes and handing the fat man a bottle, who also succumbed to intoxication after finishing it due to his low alcohol tolerance. Lat 2 tried to escape but was stopped and forced to drink. The next morning, realizing he had training, he woke the fat man, who was inexplicably now blue. Lat 2 took him to the infirmary, encountering B letter 1EA1CH L letter 189 on the way. She took the fat man to her department head, who explained it was likely caused by drinking water from the tomb and suggested an MRI to fix it. While there, he also examined Lat 2, noticing something but dismissing it, sending Lat 2 away. A spy from Kao's department reported Lat 2's condition to Kao, who questioned why Kao L letter 1 Bull letter 1E3NG allowed this within the organization. The fat man recovered. He suspected Lat 2 knew Ngo MI letter 1EC5N, as Ngo MI letter 1EC5N had rescued him twice. and the sorcerer had mentioned Lat 2's knife belonged to Ngo M I letter 1 EC5N. Before Lat 2 could respond, they were captured by Kau's men. Meanwhile, Department 5's head informed the chief and Ngo M I letter 1 EC5N of their research findings, warning that Lat 2 would soon be consumed by the sorcerer's power. B letter 1 EA1CHL letter 189 arrived, reporting that Kao had captured Lat 2 and the Fat Man and was fighting Van Min. Van Min demanded their release. Kao believed Lat 2 might become a traitor like Van Min's previous recruit. The chief intervened, ordering Kao to release them. He knew about Lat 2's condition and had Department 5 monitoring him. Kao argued that until the coffin was opened, the situation would repeat, but the chief guaranteed he'd take responsibility if anything happened. Kao's condition was that he would proctor the organization's entrance exam in 2 months. B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 decided to intensely train them to avoid Kao's wrath. Their training regime was grueling: running, chemical synthesis, shooting, wrestling, martial arts from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. daily. A month later, B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 took them shopping. She suggested the Fat Man lose weight, as he hadn't lost any fat despite a month of intense training. Lat 2 carried the shopping bags. She reminded them of the upcoming exam. Kao wouldn't let them fail. Failure meant expulsion, but for Lat 2, leaving meant the power within him would kill him. Department head Kao assigned them a mission: to apprehend a suspect accused of eating village chickens. The suspect was hiding in a house. They had 30 minutes to capture him alive. It seemed easy, but caution was advised. Entering the house, they smelled a strong stench. Finding no one inside, they heard noises from behind and found the suspect eating a live chicken. Lat 2 realized he was possessed and the suspect fled. They chased him. He threw roof tiles, slowing down the Fat Man, who took a different route. Lat 2 pursued, using a stick to trip the suspect, but he was pushed back. Lat 2 grabbed his leg. The suspect tried to escape, only to be tackled by the Fat Man jumping from the roof. The mission was complete, and the Fat Man was taken away, but Lat 2 was kept to clean up. Kao claimed he needed to dispose of something, implying Lat 2. However, Van Min and B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 intervened. The chief also messaged, ordering Kao to release him. Though angry, Kao noticed the chief's change since Ngo M I letter 1 EC5N joined. Days later, they went to a city on a new mission. Upon arrival, they met a police officer, Duong Tiru, who assisted with transportation. Kao and Van Min were sent on a vacation to resolve their conflict exile on an island for a week. B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 gave Lat 2 medication to suppress the power within him. The Fat Man asked Duong Tiru about their mission, investigating mysterious cases of sudden, unexplained comas. Initially dismissed as simple cases, similar incidents kept occurring, demanding their attention. Lat 2 felt a sudden heat, suggesting a side effect from the medication. They took him for a checkup. Duong Tiru revealed that the comatose patients were being moved to the hospital's basement to avoid media attention. They encountered Department Head Lam from Department 4, who'd arrived earlier but needed their assistance due to complications. According to him, the victims shared a common mark. Duong Tiru arranged accommodations for Lat 2's team to begin investigating. Later that night, Lat 2 questioned the medication's effectiveness with the Fat Man when they received news of Lam's emergency. They rushed to the hospital and met B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189, who explained Lam had been found unconscious and admitted. They found Duong Tiru bringing food to his wife. A nurse explained his wife had been in a coma for a year, following an accident that killed their child and paralyzed her lower body. She'd attempted suicide multiple times, only stopped by Duong Tiru, hence the coma. He was heavily in debt due to her care. At Lam's room, they found Ngo M I letter 1 EC5N, who explained that Lam had been possessed by an energy similar to Lat 2's, which he easily extracted, asking for a container. The Fat Man found a thermos. When asked if Ngo M I letter 1 EC5N could remove the energy from Lat 2, he admitted it would be difficult. That night, Lat 2 woke from a nightmare. NGO-MI-1EC5N had extracted his consciousness, creating a separate entity allowing his body to rest while his mind worked. He took Lat 2 into the fat man's mind. It initially appeared as a magnificent landscape, but deeper within, they found the fat man defeating various versions of himself in different games. NGO-MI-1EC5N brought Lat 2 out and separated the fat man's consciousness. He acknowledged the chief was right. The fat man was not ordinary. NGO-MI-1EC5N ordered the fat man to release the energy. He captured and squeezed the energy, splitting it into two, which flew off in different directions. NGO-MI-1EC5N wanted them to find one path, while he'd handle the other. They followed the shadowy figure to the hospital's supply room. Lat 2 went inside, leaving the fat man to guard the door. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, and the shadowy figure attacked Lat 2. The fat man forced the door open and joined the fight. Lat 2 told him to summon NGO-MI-1EC5N using the red string NGO-MI-1EC5N had given them. The figure flung the string into a water tank, forcing the fat man to retrieve it while Lat 2 was restrained. The figure wanted the sorcerer's power within Lat 2, who was willing to surrender it to escape. NGO-MI-1EC5N arrived, easily dispatching the figure, revealing it to be a mere puppet. The fat man was startled to see Lat 2 seemingly dead, but it was only a duplicate. Lat 2 later awoke unharmed. He realized the puppet master must be nearby. Meanwhile, shadowy figures appeared on a rooftop, referring to the puppet master as the Grand Master revealed to be Duong Tiru. Lat 2 re-examined the victim's markings and recognized them. Insects emerged from the marks, poisonous insects that would kill the victim and spread the poison if forcefully removed. Lat 2 noted the marks resembled a symbol on a necklace NGO-MI-1EC5N had taken from the tomb. Meanwhile, the figures demanded Duong Tiru return to their group, stating he'd been away too long. He requested more time. They suspected he was lingering because of his dying wife, but he believed he could still save her. The leader, L-1EA1C-Van, stated he would allow Duong Tiru to do as he pleased, but first he needed the location of the city's sacred artifact. Duong Tiru didn't know. The city had changed dramatically over the centuries. L-1EA1C-Van insisted he'd find it. Duong Tiru then sought out Lat 2's group. B-1EA1CH-L-1ED9 provided him with the investigation files, and he requested Lat 2 accompany him to the station for official procedures. Just as they left the hospital, L-1EA1C-Van initiated a car chase from behind. B-1EA1CH-L-1ED9 and the fat man decided to sneak into Duong Tiru's wife's room to see if the Bureau's technology could help her. The fat man found some green jade stones under the bed, stones he'd collected from the buried kingdom. Duong Tiru must have been there. The symbol on the victims matched the necklace from the kingdom, suggesting a connection. B-1EA1CH-L-1ED9 called their department head, who confirmed Duong Tiru was the leader of a heretical cult, warning against rash action. However, upon hearing Lat 2 had been with Duong Tiru, the department head was concerned because the chief had already handled the paperwork. The fat man called Lat 2, who, instead of acting immediately, asked Duong Tiru to take him back to the hospital. Duong Tiru, knowing the truth, told Lat 2 to stop pretending. He threw Lat 2 out, revealing himself as someone Lat 2 had rescued from the tomb. Lat 2 asked why he needed the sorcerer's resentment. Duong Tiru said he needed it to save his wife. He had to try. Lat 2 was knocked down and about to be drained of his energy when NGO-MI-1EC5N texted him to steal a car and escape. Duong Tiru blocked his path. Lat 2 crashed into a cliff, causing a rock slide to bury Duong Tiru, then escaped, contacting the fat man and relaying NGO-MI-1EC5N's location, the same place where Lam had been attacked. They decided to meet there. The fat man and B-1EA1CH-L-1ED9 took a taxi but were warned by the driver not to go. 20 years prior, a construction collapse had killed 3 workers. and subsequent occupants experienced accidents, leading to its abandonment. Lat 2 arrived, entering and sensing someone following him. He drew his weapon. It was the Fat Man and B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189, having been forced out of the taxi. Duong Tieru escaped the rubble and encountered L letter 1EA1C van, revealing he'd found the sacred artifact's location and wouldn't bother him further. But he summoned reinforcements to the hospital. Lat 2's group entered the ill-fated building. As Lat 2 stepped into the elevator, he saw the ghostly images of previous victims. They went upstairs. B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 heard something, and they investigated but found nothing. Suddenly, crazed individuals emerged from the shadows. Unsure if they were human or not, they fled, only to be blocked. Surrounded, B letter 1EA1CHL letter 189 attacked. Before Lat 2 and the Fat Man could fully engage with their weapons, the attackers regenerated. Ngo Mi letter 1EC5N suddenly appeared, using magic to eliminate the puppets. He told them to go to the basement, not upstairs. Down in the basement, they found a jade and Ngo Mi letter 1EC5N asked them to clean up. Duong Tieru was furious that L letter 1EA1C Van had used his wife as a hostage to force him to take the sacred artifact from Ngo Mi letter 1EC5N, whose power was well known. Duong Tieru returned home to reminisce with his wife. L letter 1EA1C Van called, warning that if he didn't have the artifact by tomorrow night, he wouldn't see his wife again. The next morning, Lat 2's group went to Duong Tieru's wife's room, but they were too late. Ngo Mi letter 1EC5N gave Lat 2 a bag containing the artifact, knowing Duong Tieru would be watching. He waited outside the hospital and attacked Lat 2, stealing the bag and escaping, evading Lat 2. However, Ngo Mi letter 1EC5N captured him. Duong Tieru claimed it was his artifact. Ngo Mi letter 1EC5N also wanted what was rightfully his, referring to half of the elixir the sorcerer had stolen. Duong Tieru didn't have it. The sorcerer had used him as a shield. Lat 2 and the Fat Man intercepted Duong Tieru, who insisted he wasn't involved in the comas. He stabbed himself, collecting blood, then vanished. Ngo Mi letter 1EC5N let him go. The technique cost half his energy. It seemed Duong Tieru wasn't the mastermind. Duong Tieru confronted L letter 1EA1C Van to get his wife back, but L letter 1EA1C Van demanded the artifact first. Duong Tieru refused. L letter 1EA1C Van knew Duong Tieru was under a time constraint. When Duong Tieru surrendered the artifact, L letter 1EA1C Van attacked. Duong Tieru fought back, but escaping cost him half his energy. He reached his wife, only to find L letter 1EA1C Van there, revealing she'd died upon arrival. Duong Tieru was devastated by his wife's death. L letter 1EA1C Van revealed he'd orchestrated her accident, enraging Duong Tieru. L letter 1EA1C Van believed Duong Tieru, as a cult leader, had abandoned his followers for a woman, making him weak. L letter 1EA1C Van pinned Duong Tieru to the ground, about to kill him when Lat 2's group and Ngo Mi letter 1EC5N arrived. Ngo Mi letter 1EC5N told them to deal with L letter 1EA1C Van's followers while he checked on Duong Tieru's wife. Duong Tieru wanted Ngo Mi letter 1EC5N to stay away, but was told to worry about himself. Ngo Mi letter 1EC5N released Duong Tieru's wife's soul, sending her to the afterlife. Duong Tieru admitted to making a mistake by recruiting L letter 1EA1C Van, but blamed his own error on abandoning his cult for a woman. Both were severely injured. Duong Tieru used a pin to trigger falling metal containers. As he was about to kill L letter 1EA1C Van, Lat 2's group stopped him. L letter 1EA1C Van's death would kill the patients. Duong Tieru disregarded their warning. L letter 1EA1C Van was pleased, viewing his death as justified. B letter 1EA1CH L letter 189 called, reporting the hospital patients were becoming reanimated. Ngo Mi letter 1EC5 and sent Lat 2's group back. He would handle it. They returned to B letter 1EA1CH L letter 189 to prevent the patients from escaping. Ngo-1E-C5N defeated L-1E-A1C Van and placed a centipede in his mouth. He lacked patience and gave L-1E-A1C Van an ultimatum: eliminate the poisonous insects or face severe consequences. While struggling with the patients, the insects were suddenly eradicated. B-1EA1CH L-1ED9 still wanted them to capture the insects before they escaped. Though the poison was gone, Ngo-1E-C5N didn't release L-1EA1C Van, intending to interrogate him. He asked Duong Tiru his plans. He still had a way to reunite him with his wife. Before he could ask, Ngo-1EC5N knocked him unconscious. He awoke in the hospital with a letter from Ngo-1EC5N. The letter revealed a shocking truth. He heard a baby's cry his wife's reincarnation. He could start over, but it would be almost 20 years later. The next day, Lat-2's group returned. Lat-2 asked B-1EA1CH L-1ED9 about vacation time. She explained that they received a certain number of days off depending on the mission's difficulty. Z-rank missions allowed unlimited time off. They'd completed 2 B-rank missions, earning 6 days off. They then heard that someone new had joined Ngo-1EC5N's Department 6 Duong Tiru. The fat man was surprised, as Ngo-1EC5N never hired anyone. Lat-2 dragged the fat man away, stating they couldn't understand Ngo-1EC5N's intentions. Meanwhile, at a mountain temple, the monks were hurriedly preparing the temple for a wedding ceremony. The abbot reasoned that if a foreign priest could do it, surely a monk could too. He demanded his disciples fix everything to his liking. Suddenly, a disciple spontaneously combusted after touching a broken incense stick. The abbot quickly threw him into a water vat to extinguish the flames. Afterward, he noticed someone outside the temple gate. Recognizing the individual, he called the bureau chief that night to report that the person they believed dead was, in fact, still alive. The next morning, Lat-2 visited his former comrade's grave and encountered Captain Vuong. Vuong urged Lat-2 never to forget his duty as a soldier. Immediately after Captain Vuong left, Bok Lo unexpectedly arrived, requesting Lat-2 end his leave for an urgent mission. At that time, An Map was transporting Duong Tiu for a joint mission. They picked up Lat-2 and Bok Lo, and together they headed to the mountain temple. Seeing the temple transformed into a wedding venue, Lat-2 realized the abbot was up to something. He not only knew this place, but had lived here since childhood. Bok Lo subsequently knocked on the door, and the person who answered unwittingly recognized Lat-2's return. Meanwhile, the individual the bureau chief feared was at the base, investigating Lat-2's group. He knew the group was at the temple and realized the chief was acting swiftly. He then went to the experimental specimens he had created and activated them. He wanted to see how Cao Yuang would continue as bureau chief as his personnel died. He'd waited a long time for this moment, and he was determined to succeed. The monk informed Lat-2 that the abbot regretted losing a talent like him, implying that he regretted not tormenting him further. His teacher later visited the abbot, who was delighted by Lat-2's return. The abbot explained his past strictness was intended to motivate Lat-2 to eventually work for the Dan Di Kuk. But now that Lat-2 didn't want him as his teacher, the abbot saw that he remained unchanged. He invited others to stay overnight, but the bureau chief instructed them to take the abbot away as the temple was no longer safe. However, the abbot insisted on staying, unwilling to trouble the Dan Di Kuk. Simultaneously, Dan Di Kuk personnel were unexpectedly attacked by monsters. The 5th-ranking section chief, witnessing the deaths of his colleagues, urgently contacted the bureau chief. The chief discovered their system had been hacked, exposing the personnel. Section Chief Kau called, but the chief ignored him, issuing a warning for all personnel to discard their wristbands. Lat-2's group, having discarded their trackers, discovered the mountain temple under attack. Lat-2 wanted to return, but a monster charged, attacking from the front. An Map reversed the vehicle to avoid the blow, only to find another monster behind them. He swerved, turned the car around, and sped towards them. The group was then pursued by a swarm of monsters pouring down from the mountain, even destroying rocks to block their path. Although Lat-2 fired his weapon, the sheer number of monsters overwhelmed them. Suddenly, a monster leaped from the mountain, crushing the vehicle's engine. The group was now surrounded, with a red-eyed creature seemingly leading the pack. It then unleashed a swarm of lesser monsters to attack Lat-2's group. The group was forced to exit the vehicle to fight, while the red-eyed monster leaped onto the mountain. As Lat-2's group struggled against the creatures, Duong-Tiu was frustrated that his phone, containing pictures of his wife, was broken. He summoned a needle, controlling it to eliminate the surrounding lesser monsters. He then destroyed his vehicle and created dozens of needles to throw everywhere, aiming to wipe out the horde. Duong-Tiu hadn't wanted to help, but it had become personal, so he acted. He wanted the group to quickly ascend the mountain to deal with the red-eyed monster, while he handled the rest. Bok Lo, believing Duong-Tiu could manage, told Lat-2 to proceed. On the way, the group noticed the city was also under attack. The bureau chief contacted Van Min, along with section chiefs Kau and Lam, asking them to mobilize their subordinates to rescue the city's residents. Section Chief Number 5 suspected a traitor might be among them, and that the enemy wanted the bureau chief to disperse his personnel for easier elimination. But who else would save the people if he didn't? Section Chiefs Kao and Van Min both urged the other to be careful and not die, so they'd still have someone to argue with later. Although they openly disliked each other, in this moment of danger, both were genuinely concerned for their rival. Meanwhile, Lat-2's group returned to the temple and split up to find the abbot. They discovered the monk Lat-2 knew was unconscious nearby, but couldn't approach due to the rubble. Bok Lo then found the abbot, who was being attacked and thrown around by a monster. Lat-2 immediately rushed to stop the monster, while An-Map and Bok Lo took the abbot to safety. Once secure, An-Map returned to assist Lat-2. The abbot also wanted Bok Lo to help the other two, as he had once abandoned his comrades for a mission, leading to this situation. The monster then lunged at An-Map, forcing Lat-2 to block the attack and push it back. He knocked off its glasses, disorienting it, allowing Bok Lo to grab it by the neck. An-Map shot the monster to give Bok Lo space, allowing Lat-2 to rush in and decapitate it. But upon exiting, they discovered the abbot was missing. He had been captured by the mastermind, who also released more monsters to attack them. Bok Lo realized the mastermind was Tam Dat. As Lat-2 slashed at the map, he unexpectedly unleashed some power, regaining his senses and realizing what he'd done. The section chiefs were overwhelmed by the massive number of monsters, which showed no sign of diminishing. Suddenly, Engyo Min created a magical barrier encompassing the city, eliminating all the monsters. But Tam Dat, from the lake, unexpectedly rose with a gigantic body, radiating intense heat. His flames incinerated everything nearby. As the flames approached Van Min's group, Lat-2 charged forward, blocking the flames and then dashing off. He sped past Engyo Min and straight towards Tam Dat. Lat-2 tried to land a punch on Tam Dat, but was sent flying back by a counter-punch. Lat-2 then created several whirlwinds of water to submerge Tam Dat, but the abbot knew it wouldn't be enough. Tam Dat reached out, seizing Lat-2, and revealed his flames never extinguished. He seemed amused by the power within Lat-2 and began absorbing it. This was exactly what Engyo Min had wanted. The moment Tam Dat started absorbing the power, Engyo Min lunged forward, grabbing Tam Dat's head and pulling him from the enormous body. Engyo Min explained that he could have dealt with Tam Dat long ago, but had deliberately waited to use him to drain the evil energy from Lat-2. Tam Dat, still using the large body, attacked Engyo Min, but Engyo Min effortlessly blocked the body with one hand and shot Tam Dat in the head. Lat-2 then fell into the water. In Lat-2's mind, Engyo Min told him to choose a side of a coin, giving him a choice. Days later, Lat-2 unexpectedly left the Dan Di Kuk. The bureau chief and the abbot wanted Lat-2 to forge his own path. They decided to have a drink together after many years apart. Lat 2 now possessed new power. His hair had turned white, and his eyes glowed. The story continues, so let's see how powerful Lat 2's new abilities will be. For now, goodbye.